Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
Persona.
Okay, now pointing out the elephant in the room. I may be a couple decades late on this Persona train, but dang, I'm glad I got my ticket when I did. Now, prior to playing Persona 3 FES, I've always heard about but never played any game from the series. So before beating the game, I never knew what it was about, the concept, the gameplay, and most importantly, I never knew how deep waifu wars could get. Yeah, upon seeking guidance from the highest power of
Cranky chap.
and asking for advice on what to do and where to start for the series, the general consensus was to begin at 3 before tackling the future games of 4 and the soon-to-be-released Persona 5. Due to the fact of the story being, quote, rich and captivating, and the gameplay being something different as well as being a fun time compared to other gameplay from different games I've also played. Now, for this entry of Instant Replay, we're of course looking at the main story of Persona 3 FES, better known as The Journey. And if demanded or available, the second expansion known as The Answer could be reviewed separately, due to the fact that it heavily ties to The Journey, as well as the vast differences in both the story and the gameplay. Anywho, onwards and upwards I always say, let's unleash our personas, ladies and gentlemen. Persona 3 is a Japanese role-playing game that was developed and published by Atlus in 2006 and released the following year to North America on April of 2007. It was sent out with a strict Sony release to the PlayStation 2, PSP, and then a PlayStation Network release 7 years later. During that time, there was another release of Persona 3 which included updates, a new story epilogue, and many quote-unquote upgrades to the previous Persona 3 release, known as Persona 3 The Director's Cut, but released as Persona 3 FES. And much like the meaning of FES, it is a festival of a game.
Thou art I, and I am thou. From the sea of thy soul I cometh. I am Orpheus, master of strings.
As we suspected.
You as the main character or protagonist, with whatever name you want, like mine, are an exchange student to Gekkoukan High School. In, you guessed it,
Japan! Welcome to Japan! Come on in, Japan!
you later join a group called the Specialized Extracurricular Execution Squad, or just C's for short. You enter this group only after discovering your potential, and you'll hear that word a lot, of being able to have and use a persona. Now, with this power, you as the main character enter and explore Tartarus, aka the Tower Labyrinth, with all of the monsters and none of the David Bowie. The catch is, you only enter the Tartarus during the dark hour, the time between days, just basically midnight. Now during this time, only people that use personas can truly experience the dark hour. If you can't, well, time stands still and you're basically a coffin for the whole time. And without getting into any spoiler territory, this game goes through a lot of emotions. Love, loss, twists and turns, the good and the bad. Try and go in this game as fresh as you can. The story, the characters are well written, and it's easy to become attached to them. And by going in it fresh, it'll let you keep an open mind and a blank slate, much like the main character would have. And if you are like me, you'll get angry and pissed off during these times. But that's how the game gets you. Now, long story short, you try and fight your way to the top of the Tower Labyrinth, aka Tartarus, and try and end all this shadow craziness once and for all. Now, where this game can go all out and kill everything at night, during the day it's quite different, and depending on how you play, it can vary. What you do during the day in the non-main story events doesn't really play much of effect into the rest of the game. With that being said, it does play a big part in the ending with your social links. But the rest of those parts can be explained during the gameplay aspect of this P3 review. Now, speaking of which, this game is literally a life simulator by day and an RPG turn-based strategy game by night. If you want to get technical about it, this is basically the Bruce Wayne Batman of video game genres. Now hear me out about this. The main character is a suave, helpful, flirtatious, and depending on how you play, rich with all the monies, Bruce Wayne by day. But by night, when the dark hour hits, you basically put on your cowl to fight to protect humanity from the terrible presence of the shadows and evildoers. So yeah, you're basically Batman. Now, Dark Knight jokes aside, the gameplay of the life simulator can vary due to how you play as a person and tackle each situation. Should you hang out with this person often? Should I be able to go out with this person on Sundays? Or should I be a loner and play video games all day? The answer is yes. Like I said, depending on how you tackle each social link can determine who you can have a future relationship with and what personas you can get via fusion. What is fusion, you may ask? We'll get to that later. Now, there are 22 social links in the game, which is a lot. But on the plus side, you have a whole in-game year to build up these links. And it is possible to max out all these links in 1 year. But it does take time and effort. And also, maybe a new game plus. And don't be afraid to upgrade your courage, your academics, and charm by doing various things during the daytime or evening. Because some social links can only be accessed by a certain level of status. Best case scenario, shoot for the max stats all around. Intelligent for academics, charismatic for charm, and, I'm not even kidding, a badass in courage. How do you boost these up? Well, simple things really. Singing karaoke, going to the arcade, drinking coffee. These are all ways to increase your status in the game. And if there is one word I might say to best describe this gameplay aspect of Persona 3 FES, and that is an investment. But in the long run, it helps a lot. And it carries over into New Game Plus, which can help bring a bunch of social links to a sooner part of the game than you could on your first playthrough. Okay, now the fun part, the JRPG Nighttime Shadow Crusades. It is a turn-based section where you control your character in a fight against the shadows. You can use both your health points and your persona spell points to attack or aid your allies in battle in different ways. Physical striking attacks or elemental attacks. There are many ways that you can face your enemies, which themselves have their own individual strengths, resistances, and weaknesses. Make sure to analyze enemies as much as you can, along with knowing your own team's strengths and weaknesses. Now this will play a huge factor into the gameplay, knowing what your allies can and cannot do, and what they're weak against. Because nothing says in-depth gameplay than getting one of your buddies one-shotted because you forgot they were vulnerable to electricity or wind or something of that nature. Now, 3 minutes into only explaining the gameplay, it may seem a little bit overwhelming for some people, this whole concept of what P3 has to offer. And to be honest, it was for me in the beginning. But after an hour or so of gameplay, I personally began to get a feel for what this game has to offer and everything that it does. And if you want to get symbolic with this game, you can say this game and the main character parallels the same process, because he himself has never gone in a fight against a persona and doesn't understand the emotions that his teammates do. So only through time and experience, the main character along with the player can get a feeling on how this game and how the mechanics work together. Oh God, what else was I missing? Ah yes, fusions exist in this game. Now what does that mean? Well, when a mommy persona and a daddy persona love each other very much, they mix together and make a powerful baby persona. sometimes mommy and daddy like to get kinky and may invite others to help them make something pretty awesome. This is called fusion, and it's pretty fun to do. And if you have a chance, try and make as many fusion combinations as possible, and if you use your social links and elevate them to their max, you can be able to reap the full rewards of gaining complete experience points and getting all the moves and spells that your persona has the potential of getting. Okay, listen up. I almost forgot. There are quest lines that you can be able to do over in the Velvet Room. They're known as Elizabeth's requests. Have a chance, do as many as you can, and make sure you go out with Elizabeth a bunch. You will not regret it.
If you wouldn't mind, I'd like you to guide me through it.
Yes! 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 Come to Papa!
Go on.
This game, as stated before, was made by the Japanese developer Atlas. And don't these Japanese roots show? The visual style mimics anime and the sound effects match it as well. The in-game graphics are decent for the time, but they do show their age looking back on it, especially playing a bunch of recent games like The Witcher. But that is not much as a bad thing, but more of a looking back on it, enjoying the industry for what it did for the time. Throughout the game, if you haven't caught on by now, also has some fully animated cutscenes in a style that can be described as its own. Now, it isn't the greatest visual representation of anime, but it holds its own, and is at least better than the new Berserk anime.
No, 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 no.
Now, as mentioned, graphically it holds out, but it does show age. Yet the variety of characters and their design, along with most enemies and a lot of Persona, hold strong in their looks, taking heavy influence from multiple religions and beliefs, all holding their very own style and look that I would consider a great artistic interpretation for the characters. Well, most of them at least. Now, in regards to sound design, there are many individual sounds that are used for certain characters and creatures, but my main complaints with the sound design is the high repetition of certain music and certain sound effects throughout the game. And if you played P3 before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm talking about certain school soundtracks when you're going through that, repeats through a lot of the seasons, and every single time you get into a battle, the same song pops up again, again, and again. But by that time, it repeats for about the 100th time that you battled a persona. You've grown reasonably numb to it, but if I was going to complain most about it, it would probably be the sound design. Obviously, entertainment's a very, very subjective thing in its concept, so it might vary from person to person. As a person that's never played any of the Persona games prior to this, my opinion might vastly differ from the person that started out with Persona 1 and continued from then. But with just me playing 3, I'm glad I did. It got me fully invested into the series, and I can't wait to play P4. But more on that later. Depending on how your style is, if you're into the grind, if you're not afraid of maybe spending well over 100 hours into this game like I have, you may or may not like it. But to me, it's worth the grind. Embrace it. Love it. It's something different and something fresh for the time being, and I wouldn't be surprised if they'd made it as an HD release later down the line, although I highly doubt it, and we're getting P5 next year in North America. Now this game, P3, is rated M for mature, and it obviously shows, not because of the hardcore gameplay, because honestly the Persona fights aren't even that drastic and not even that enriched and enthralling. There's nothing special about it. All you do is just, when your turn's up, you pick what you want to do, and then it just happens. There's no quick time events, there's no working out combos, you don't even choose what your AI people can do, what spells they cast. But that doesn't matter. what makes it M for mature is the subject matter. And now, for some people, it can be really deep, and P3 is well known for having an enriched story that could be labeled as depressing for some, but the fact that it does that makes it entertaining on a story level. The story, like I mentioned, lasts over an in-game year, and people might think that's too long, the game's probably boring. This is a story that needs to be told that way. The character development is spot on. I enjoy the outcomes. I enjoy the people. If I'm friends with them in the game, I feel like I've grown a chance to know them and accept them as one of my own. And building up those social links makes it even better. So, depending on how you tackle games like this, you can really enjoy it if you want to pay that investment into this game. Now, if you're not into the long haul and want to play something casually every now and then and just get your quick fix of a video game, this game isn't for you. I'm just going to be as blunt as possible. If you're into the long haul, go for it. But if not, you might want to pass up on this game if you're into that one and done type of situation. The journey from Persona 3 FES, in my opinion, has to be one of the best stories in a game that I've played in recent memory. It may be long, it may be captivating, but overall it's worth what time you put into it. Everything about this game that I mentioned up to this point, the good and the bad, makes it its own character. It makes it its own entity. And I'm glad that I got recommended this game from Cranky Chat Discord. It was a good first step in the right direction, and I'm excited to play P4, and I'm excited to play Persona 5 coming out. Overall, P3 FES, The Journey, an excellent story, pretty decent gameplay, and overall an individual experience that if you want to get into it, you will not regret it. And hopefully, if anyone that's just watching this review hasn't heard of Persona or anything from the series, this would be an excellent way to get in. Because you would be like how I was months ago when I first picked up the game and asked myself, what is Persona? And after this, you'll know the answer, and you'll be your own main character. My personal recommendation, play this game. Honestly, if you want to try something new and something different and aren't afraid to be adventurous, play Persona 3 FES The Journey. It'll be well worth it. Well, episode 2 is in the books, folks, and I'm glad I did it. And it seems really out of left field that this game was brought to the forefront compared to the first game that I did. But after beating it, I feel like I needed to say something about it. Now, what do you think about Persona 3? Feel free to leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. And now, I'm officially opening the floodgates on this one. Folks, who is your Persona 3 waifu? The board is yours. Discuss in the comments below who you think it is. HD out.